There is a moment, small, invisible, quiet, when someone asks you, "Are you okay?" And before your mind even has time to form an honest answer, your mouth gives the habitual one, "I'm fine." It slips out effortlessly, almost rehearsed like a reflex you learned a long time ago. And the strange part is, no one notices the tiny pause before you say it. No one sees the way your chest tightens, or how your eyes lose focus for half a second, or how your hands instinctively hide inside your sleeves. No one hears the part of you that whispers, "Please don't ask again, I'm not ready to unravel." And maybe that's why you're here, because somewhere inside you, beneath the noise of everyday life, you know there are people, maybe even you, who carry storms behind calm smiles, people who laugh at jokes, nod during conversations, finish their tasks, answer messages with cheerful emojis, and yet walk through life with a subtle ache lodged somewhere between their ribs and their heart. The kind of ache that doesn't scream, it just lingers, quietly, constantly, unseen. There's a certain type of person who becomes an expert at pretending they're okay. They exist in every school, every office, every friend group, every family. They're the ones others describe as strong, independent, chill, or always put together. But people rarely ask themselves what it takes. How many swallowed words, how many suppressed tears, how many emotional negotiations inside the mind it takes to earn those labels. Because people who seem fine on the outside often have a different story written beneath their skin. Maybe you've known someone like that, or maybe that someone is you. You wake up, look in the mirror and say, "I'm good." Not because you feel good, but because admitting otherwise feels like opening a door you're not sure you can close again. You smile at people, greet them warmly, laugh at their humor, and say all the right things. But at the end of the day, when you're alone in your room, sitting on the edge of your bed with the lights off, there is a heaviness that settles over you like an old blanket, a weight your body knows well. Sometimes it's sadness, sometimes it's exhaustion, sometimes it's confusion about who you're supposed to be or what you're allowed to need, and sometimes it's just emptiness. But no matter what shape the hurt takes, the response stays the same. I'm fine. Because for people who hide their pain, I'm fine is not just an answer, it's a shield, a mask, a coping mechanism perfected over years. So why do people do this? Why do we pretend we're fine even when we're breaking quietly inside? It starts long before adulthood. For many, it begins in childhood. The first classroom where you felt embarrassed for crying. The first home where big emotions were met with silence. The first moment you learned that your feelings were inconvenient, dramatic, or too much. Somewhere along the way, you unconsciously decided that the safest way to exist was to shrink your emotional presence. Not because you didn't need comfort, but because you learned to survive without expecting it. Maybe you grew up with caretakers who were emotionally distant, stressed, or unpredictable. Maybe you had a parent who dismissed your tears by saying, "Stop crying, it's not a big deal," or "You're sensitive, toughen up." Maybe you learned that the only way to be loved was to be easy, quiet, low maintenance, self-sufficient. And so you became the child who didn't ask for help, the teenager who kept their problems to themselves, the adult who handles everything alone. This is what psychologists call self-silencing, the act of swallowing your truth to maintain harmony, to keep the peace, to avoid burdening others over time. It becomes your identity. You stop even considering the thought of opening up. Your brain learns to mask your emotions instinctively before you even realize what you're feeling. There's also emotional masking, another hidden survival strategy. It's when your face smiles while your nervous system trembles underneath, when you use humor to deflect your hurt, when you use busyness to outrun your loneliness, when you use strength as a costume. People mistake this for confidence, but really, it's a well-practiced form of invisibility. And then there's cognitive dissonance, the mental tug-of-war between who we appear to be and who we actually are. You know you're hurting, you know you need connection, you know you're carrying too much. Yet you keep telling yourself, "I'm fine," because admitting the truth feels like stepping into uncertainty. The brain hates uncertainty. It prefers consistency, even if the consistency is quietly painful. Attachment patterns play a role too. If you grew up learning that vulnerability leads to rejection, mockery, or emotional distance, your adult brain will do everything it can to avoid repeating that pain. Avoidance becomes protection. Silence becomes safety. Stoicism becomes survival. You don't hide because you want to deceive people. You hide because you want to protect yourself. But there's a cost to pretending, and the cost is heavy. There's a moment during conversations when your mind drifts, not because you don't care, but because you carry emotional fatigue so deep that it feels like walking through water. There are nights when you feel disconnected from everyone, even people you love, because no one truly knows what's happening inside you. There are days when a small comment, a small inconvenience, a small disappointment hits you harder than it should because your emotional bucket is already full. The world sees your calm, but it doesn't see the quiet wars you fight when you're alone. People say things like, "You're so strong," not realizing that strength was never a choice for you. It was demanded, expected, required. And nobody sees the silent emotional negotiations you make just to get through the day. The pep talks you give yourself in the shower, the deep breaths you take before entering a room, the way you retreat to the bathroom not because you need to, but because you need a moment where no one is looking. The way you replay conversations in your head, wondering if you seemed normal enough, stable enough, unbroken enough. You present a flawless exterior because it feels safer than revealing the truth, because truth means vulnerability, and vulnerability means risk. Maybe you've been let down before. Maybe you opened up once and someone used your softness against you. Maybe people invalidated your feelings, minimized your struggles, or made you feel dramatic, and your nervous system remembered. It stored the lesson like a scar, so now you protect yourself in the only way you know how. You say you're fine, but here's the hidden truth, one that most people never realize. The ones who look the most together are often the ones who long most deeply to be seen, not for their strength, not for their resilience, not for their adaptability, but for their humanity, for the feelings they've buried, for the fears they've hidden, for the stories they've never told. There's a man who goes to work every day, cracking jokes, offering help, smiling politely, but no one notices that every morning he sits in his car for a few extra minutes, gathering the courage to face the world. There's a woman who gives advice to all her friends, comforting them with warmth and wisdom, but no one sees her sitting alone late at night, scrolling through her thoughts, wondering why she can care for everyone except herself. There's a teenager who gets good grades, participates in class, and never causes trouble, but no one sees the pressure she puts on herself to be perfect, so she never becomes a burden. There's a friend who hosts movie nights, sends memes, responds with enthusiasm, yet hasn't shared anything real about themselves in years. And then there's you, a person with a whole universe of emotions inside, galaxies of memories, storms of feelings, years of unspoken stories, but you've convinced yourself that no one can hold them, or worse, that no one wants to. So you hide behind "I'm fine." But what would happen? Just imagine if one day, instead of saying "I'm fine," you said "I'm tired," or "I'm overwhelmed," or "I'm hurting a little today." Maybe nothing dramatic would happen. Maybe the world wouldn't fall apart. Maybe someone, even one person, would look at you with gentle understanding and say, "It's okay, you don't have to pretend." Sometimes healing begins in the smallest moments, not in grand confessions, not in dramatic breakdowns, but in tiny cracks where your truth slips through. Like when your voice trembles slightly and someone notices, or when your eyes give away something your smile tries to hide, or when you sigh a little too deeply and someone asks, "That sounded heavy. How are you really?" These are the moments when your emotional mask meets your real self, when the barrier you built to survive starts to soften. But healing is scary because it requires confronting the parts of you you've spent years tiptoeing around. It requires facing the emotions you shoved into dark corners. It requires admitting you're human. And humanity is messy, imperfect, tender, beautiful, even in its brokenness. The people who pretend to be fine often carry a fear that if they show their wounds, they'll be judged, pitied, or misunderstood. They worry that vulnerability will make them a burden, that their sadness will push people away, that their struggles will make them seem weak. But here's something your nervous system doesn't know yet. Vulnerability doesn't repel people. It connects them. It bridges the gap between souls. When you reveal even a glimpse of what you're going through, you invite others to show you their truth too. And suddenly, both of you breathe a little easier. There are everyday moments, tiny, ordinary moments, where this pattern becomes visible if you know how to look. Someone hesitates before saying, "I'm good." Someone laughs a little too loudly at something not that funny. Someone always changes the subject when you ask about their well-being. Someone avoids eye contact when emotions enter the room. Someone shrugs and says, "It doesn't matter," even when it clearly does. These are not signs of apathy. They're quiet signals of emotional self-protection. People don't avoid vulnerability because they don't feel they avoid it because they feel too much. Some of the gentlest people you'll ever meet are carrying the heaviest emotions. Some of the kindest people learned kindness from the absence of it. Some of the wisest people have wisdom carved from pain. Some of the strongest people became strong because they had no other choice. And some of the happiest looking people are the loneliest on the inside. The cost of pretending is subtle but profound. It builds distance between you and others, distance that grows slowly, almost unnoticeably. It teaches people that you don't need support, so they stop offering it. It creates a life where you're surrounded by people, yet feel isolated within your own experience. It also takes a toll on your nervous system. When you habitually suppress emotions, your body stays in a heightened state, always alert, always bracing, always performing. Your muscles tense. Your sleep becomes shallow. Your mind grows restless. Your heart carries tension it was never meant to hold. Your body remembers everything your mouth denies. Your emotional mask might protect you, but it also traps you. And over time, the mask becomes so familiar, so comfortable, that taking it off feels unnatural. You start fearing your own feelings because you've learned to fear what they might lead to. Avoidance becomes easier than honesty. Silence becomes easier than vulnerability. Emotional numbness becomes easier than heartache. But here's something people rarely talk about. The moment you stop pretending is not the moment you fall apart. It's the moment you begin to come back home to yourself. You begin noticing tiny truths, whispers from inside that say, "I need rest. I need connection. I need someone to really hear me." These truths are not weaknesses, they're self-recognition. You weren't born hiding, you learned to hide, which means you can learn to unhide. And the first step is noticing patterns, inside you and in others. When someone always says, "I'm fine," listen to the tone, not the words. Notice the slight delay. Notice the breath they take before answering. Notice the way their eyes soften or harden. Notice the way they clench their jaw or fidget with their fingers. Notice the way they change the subject quickly after these micro expressions tell a story the person is still afraid to voice. And maybe, just maybe, you've done all of these too. If you ever want to understand someone who is hurting silently, observe the spaces between their sentences, the pauses, the way they hesitate before answering, the way they over-explain small things but stay vague about big emotions, the way they joke about things that sound a little too personal, the way they carry themselves when they think nobody is paying attention. Silence is not emptiness. Silence is information. Silence is a history. And behind that silence, there is always a story waiting to be heard. Maybe now is the moment to ask yourself a question you've avoided for years. Why do you pretend you're fine? Is it fear of being misunderstood? Fear of being judged? Fear of being abandoned? Fear of being a burden? Fear of losing control? Fear of looking weak? Fear of not being worth the effort? Only you can answer that. But the truth is this: you don't have to keep holding everything together alone. You don't have to carry pain in secret. You don't have to protect people from your emotions. You don't have to smile when you feel like breaking. You deserve relationships where honesty feels safe, where vulnerability is met with warmth. where your truth is received with gentleness, not discomfort, and you deserve to feel seen, not for the mask you wear, but for the person underneath. Before we go deeper, pause for a moment, not to overthink, not to analyze, just to breathe. Because your breathing is the one thing that reminds you you're still here, still human, still capable of softening. Now ask yourself quietly, privately, these questions. What part of me am I afraid people will see? When did I first learn that my feelings were too much? Who told me, directly or indirectly, that I should handle everything alone? How often do I say, I'm fine when I'm not? What would happen if I allowed myself to be honest just once? What do I wish someone would ask me? And most importantly, what do I truly need right now? Let those questions settle in your heart without judgment. Your answers don't have to be perfect. They don't even have to be spoken. They just have to be acknowledged. From here, healing doesn't require dramatic changes. It starts with soft, gentle steps. Maybe that means telling one trusted person, I'm struggling a bit lately. Maybe it means allowing yourself to rest without feeling guilty. Maybe it means writing your thoughts down instead of burying them. Maybe it means practicing honesty, not with the world, but with yourself. Maybe it means noticing when your body tenses and asking, what emotion is this trying to protect me from? And when you feel ready, maybe it means opening a small window, just a small one, into your inner world so light can come in again. You can also learn to look more deeply at the people around you, because sometimes the person who seems totally fine is quietly unraveling. Your gentle presence, your patient listening, your simple question, how are you really, might be the moment their mask cracks just enough to let the truth through. Support doesn't require solutions. Support requires presence. Sometimes people don't need advice. They just need someone who won't rush their feelings, who won't be uncomfortable with their sadness, who won't judge the messiness of their inner world, who won't minimize their hurt. Be that person for others and be that person for yourself. Because the world is full of people who pretend they're fine, full of stories untold, full of emotions unshared, full of hearts that beat quietly with unspoken pain. But you, right now, in this moment, you don't have to be one of them. You can choose softness over silence, honesty over perfection, connection over fear, presence over performance. There is a version of you that doesn't hide, a version of you that speaks gently but truthfully, a version of you that trusts people with your authenticity, a version of you that feels seen, heard, and held. That version of you is waiting not far away, not unreachable, just beneath the mask, just beneath the I'm fine, just beneath the rehearsed strength. All you have to do is let yourself be human, and if no one has told you this recently, hear it now. You are not weak for feeling deeply. You are not dramatic for needing comfort. You are not a burden for struggling. You are not unworthy for hurting. You are not wrong for wanting to be understood. You are human, soft, complex, wounded in some places, growing in others, trying your best with the tools you have, and that is enough. As you move forward today, tomorrow, or whenever you're ready, carry this with you. You deserve to be seen without performing. You deserve to be cared for without pretending. You deserve relationships where your emotions are not too much. You deserve the freedom to say, I'm not okay, and still feel held. Life isn't asking you to be strong all the time. It's asking you to be real. And being real is the bravest, most beautiful thing you can offer, not just to others, but to yourself. You don't have to unravel all at once. You don't have to open up to everyone. You don't have to share every detail of your inner struggles. All you have to do is stop hiding from your own heart, because your heart has been whispering for a long time, softly, patiently, hopeful that one day you'll listen, and maybe that day starts right now. So breathe, be gentle with yourself, and remember, even in the moments when you pretend you're fine, there is someone, you, in the quiet corners of your soul, who knows the truth and is ready to hold it with love. You are not alone. You are never alone. And you are worthy of a life where you don't have to pretend.